Welcome to the Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where purpose meets performance and leaders are built to shift legacies. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, executive strategist, speaker, and the secret weapon behind leaders who drive transformation at the highest levels. Each episode delivers bold truths, power skills, and real-world strategies to help you lead with precision, show up with presence, and build the kind of influence that outlasts trends. This is the space where high-impact decisions are born, where influence is intentional, and where the bold don't just lead, they change the game. So if you're ready to rise, ready to lead, and ready to create the kind of impact that moves markets, missions, and minds, you're in the right place. So, hey, game changers, I'm Dr. Sharalyn, and I'm here with Kurt Uhlir, who's going to share with us some insightful conversations today about some of the things that he's been able to achieve in his own life. If you've not checked out Kurt, you are missing it. I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting him and was blown away by his background, some of the people that he's met, some of the things that he's done. He has a lot of great insight for us today. So, Kurt, let's turn it over to you, and I would love for you to share with our audience who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. My name is Kurt Uhlir. I consider myself an operator. I just say that in terms of technically, my title will usually be at a company chief marketing officer or a chief strategy officer. But at the end of the day, I will get pulled into operations and other places, and I'm so good at what I do because I'm always questioning how do things work? How can I systematize things? And then I look at that helps me figure out how to scale things. I just happen to do it very well for marketing, but I've been an inventor on 20 plus patents around technology that we all use every day. One of the largest real estate brokers in the world, their first patents after having bought a metaverse company was actually a marketing technology that my team and I came up with ideas. That's a little bit about me. People are always going to find me at software companies, technology companies, usually with very complex technology, where the people that are making the decisions are using it, even if it's consumers. Nobody wants to know the complexity. You just want a solution that works.
Wow, that's a lot. You have a very storied background. Now, I love your nickname, the King of Scaling Companies. Tell us about that because you have a very, I would say, a very interesting style of working, not only in at work, but also in your personal life. And you kind of talk about this one strategy or this one leadership style that outperforms every other leadership style out there. Now, you know, I love leadership. So I am curious to hear what's this leadership style and why do you believe it's so impactful?
Yeah, I'll get to there with I believe servant leadership is the only way to grow truly resilient companies. And if you gave me $10 million, $100 million to go start a new company, I'm going to take a path that we can talk about with being a specific type of servant leadership that's going to outperform anything else from a speed perspective and a lowering risk perspective. But at the end of the day, I mean, I really kind of come into things where like I come in and say, hey, look, how can we set up the team to grow differently? But from a leadership perspective, that does mean stepping back and looking at things like, hey, at the end of the day, I don't hire you to do something for my company. I hire you to reach a business outcome. And so that's where the servant leadership versus authoritative, I think everybody complicates things. And most people say, like, there's hundreds or thousands of different leadership styles. And I'm like, no, there's only two. Everything else is a flavor. And so there's either that authoritative leadership style, which fundamentally says, hey, do what I say, how I say it, in the way that I say it, or you're fired at the end of the day, or the servant leadership, which is, as I said, I've hired you to reach a business outcome, at which point now it's my job to help you either reach that business outcome by looking for things that are holding you back, helping grow you as a person, acknowledge that you may have things come up in your personal life that may make you less productive for this week or this month, but I don't care about number. I do care about numbers for the week and the month, but I'm trying to hit numbers for quarters and for years and for decades. I mean, like I'm kind of a sports fan, not a huge sports fan, but like nobody just wants to win a game or even a championship. Everybody would like to create that legacy. Well, from a company perspective, if you think in terms of that, how do we dominate an industry or change something? You can't act like everybody else that's just trying to figure out how to grow 5% or 10% every year. I
So
don't know
how
if
did
that
you get
answers what you were looking for.
it does get to what I'm looking for. I love servant leadership style. I do believe there are other styles, though I'll be honest. But I do believe that you have to be a servant leader. You got to go out there and really serve and take care of the people. But I don't want to get into the specifics because I really want you
Yeah.
to talk about there. But there are three things you specifically talk about when we talk about servant leadership style that changes everything. And do you mind sharing that with our audience? I think leaders, they really need to dig into these three things that you talk about.
Yeah, well, you're welcome to remind me on a few things because I think when anybody that listens to me or comes to one of my keynotes at a conference, that will notice that I don't have just that signature thing where it's always the full repeatable. Some cases, it's what's coming to mind with me today, and so the three things today could actually be different than the exact three that I would have before. For me, the first thing that I come to for almost everything, just from a business perspective, and this applies at work, is I think that leader has to acknowledge that you're wrong about three things fundamentally in your job right now that you think you're right about. I mean, for me, everything starts from there. I mean, including I may have hired somebody for the wrong position or to do the wrong thing, or I may think this process is right, but I think it's the right thing to do because none of us ever go into a job and, or hire somebody and be like, hey, do the wrong thing. But yet, in all, anybody who manages people or a sole contributor can look back and go, something has happened, not just where the market changes, you get new industry, new information from the industry, but you could look back with what you now know today and go, knowing everything I knew 12 months ago when I made that decision, that was the wrong decision. And I now know it. Well, when you're humble enough to ask yourself every day, what could I be wrong about? When you're a leader and you bring that into
That's
every
good.
one of your one-on-ones with people, you close meetings, you provide space for people to be able to send you an idea that's a gut feeling that they don't have data for yet. What happens is you don't have to wait 12 to 18 months for these major revelations and you now figure it out in 3 months or 6 months. And if somebody will think about their listening, how many times your iterations will change in your business life when you realize when you actually discover you're wrong about something or your team's wrong about something 6 months or 12 months or 18 months earlier every time, you're now going to go through what's called like an OODA loop over and over, like 5 times faster than your competitors just within a year. So that's the first thing for me. The second part really comes into, and it is servant leadership, but it's, I mean, people get this in authoritative leadership is your team is always going to manage to see believe what you do much more than what you say. I can tell people I want to provide healthy conflict, which is usually going to be my third thing. I can tell them how I want them to respond when things get difficult. Can tell them I want them to come to me when they think something could be wrong. But if they don't see it in my actions, if they don't see it in your actions, they won't believe you. I mean, like I was at a mid-market public company. I had an issue with a peer of mine. So we're reporting to the CEO at the company, and it had gone on 3 months longer than when the situation happened where we were just butting heads. And I tell everybody else healthy conflict and bring this up because at the end of the day, if you don't bring up the healthy conflict, somebody's going to get fired usually. And it was bubbling up for me. And so when I discovered it, I went to somebody that was on. We had a shared person, and I was like, "Were you seeing this as well?" I cheered up. I said, "I'm sorry. It was my fault for not bringing it up." But I went to this shared resource and I talked about it. He's like, "Oh, I've been seeing it. It's the meetings are brutal." So the next time we had an all division meeting, I used that as an example to bring up my vulnerability of something that I had done wrong. And at the end of that meeting, three people sent me emails saying, "Hey, can we schedule time?" Two of them, nobody had not mentioned to anybody else in the company an similar issue they were having, and they were like, "I don't know how to approach it." So no matter how many times we say things, people don't believe you if they don't see it in your actions. And then the third thing I mentioned was for me, I actually put in job descriptions. I want people that thrive in healthy conflict, or they're going to try to achieve that. Because kind of alluded, like at the end of the day, like if you have an issue with somebody that's reporting to you, if they're under delivering, they need to be trained. If they need to do something differently, if they may have something going on in personal life and they haven't brought it up to you, if you don't bring it up, there is a small chance things will self-correct. But usually it's just going to build up animosity in your brain and no matter even if it's self-correct, you're still going to be bothered. And at the end of the day, then you're going to end up letting that person go when, like, hey, it probably would have, in most cases, it would solve the situation if you brought the situation up and said, hey, let's have some healthy conflict. Here's the conversation I want to have. In some cases, a leader is capable of doing that themselves. Other cases, you have to bring somebody in and they can help you kind of negotiate that as well.
So, who would you advise for them to bring in that particular scenario? Is it
It
HR?
depends.
Is it another peer or colleague, or who are
It
you reaching
depends
out?
on the team dynamics, really, to me. I would like it to be HR. I find at many companies it's not HR though, because so many times, like I want HR to be helpful, and I've had some incredible HR teams over time, but I've also had HR teams where they say, "Hey, we've gone from the startup that's now gone public, and now that had alcohol that we provided in all of our refrigerators to a no alcohol policy, but the head of HR still has wine and tequila in her office." Like no, that's not the HR that I necessarily want. I want the HR that will say, "Hey, we'll step in," and we're not talking performance plan yet. We're talking about here's an issue we see with performance if that was the issue, and they're there not to work on a PIP on a performance plan. What they're there to work on is to make sure each person is hearing each other. There are HR teams that'll do that, but I find there's not a lot of those. So often, actually, it is peers. And it's peers where, like, there are people I've worked with before that I might not be friends with personally, just because we may not gel on personal interests. But man, we know each other so well and how we show up to situations at work. We would bring each other in on a C-level team day in and day out because they'll call me in as a peer. I've also had in other cases where some cases it's a conversation like that maybe I need to have somebody on my team. Other cases, because I may know that person that's working for me, I may go in and want to have part of the conversation, but maybe the conversation isn't me coaching them about this. Maybe it's that me introducing them to a peer at another company that they're going to coach them and mentor them for a little while, knowing that I would do that for them.
I love that, which brings me to one of the things I've heard you talk about, which is coaching high performers. I like to say coaching A players. Can you tell us about your process and how do you actually identify who is truly a high performer? Sometimes we have this idea that someone is a high performer and they're really not. They may be high potential, they may be a high performer at that particular organization, but not necessarily how we would actually take that from one organization and say you're a high performer consistently. So what do you look for in that, and when you determine who you're going to invest in, who's worthy of your time?
Yeah, great question. Strangely enough, the people that I found are the best performers and the highest performers often are the people that interview the worst.
Wow.
They're really good at their jobs, but there's a difference between, to your point, like especially if somebody's, you're hiring them for a promotion from where they're currently at. Like just because we all know, just because somebody's good at their current job doesn't mean they'll be good at the next level. Just because they're good at certain things or leading a team of one size, maybe they're not going to be good at all for leading a division. And so, like that's something we can talk about. I'll look for, but often I find it's the people that like I think it's your job when you're hiring somebody to literally pull out of them, I guess figuratively pull out of them their superhero stories. The
Hmm.
There are people that just interview very well, whether at the C-suite level or elsewhere. I mean, I speak with private equity firms, and I mean, I have a friend that's an executive coach, and I went to him and I'm like, why is it if I'm just talking, I meet people, I get introduced. I have private equity firms that'll come to me and just offer me new CMO roles and things. But if I know that I'm being interviewed, like it's crash and burn. And he's like, because you're selling yourself as opposed to talking. I'm like, well, if I know this and I still screw up, and junior people know it and they still screw up, well, then as the hiring manager, your job is to then pull out of them that positioning and get them to just talk and go, hey, tell me what you've actually done well and not done well, and not just have this like a lot of HR company teams have us go through and say you have to ask everybody the exact 6 or 9 questions. And I think there may be a couple questions that I do need to ask everybody, but like your story, your background for whatever role is going to be different than the other 5 people I may be interviewing. So why would I ask you the exact same question? I want the same type of information, so my end notes will look the same. But at the end of the day, it may be the same job, but nobody got there in the same way. So I expect to have different answers, which often means having different questions.
That's good. That's good. And so you use that to determine who you want to invest in and who you're going to spend your time with.
Yeah, because part of it for me is when I start to have those conversations with people, you'll notice as you're pulling out of them in a way, because I mean, most of us have PTSD from working from, let's just say, not great companies or individuals. And so, like, if it's a person that's not interviewing well and you're starting to pull out of them things where they did think, they overachieved compared to everybody else, usually you also start to notice for them, then they'll point out some point like, oh, they'll almost apologize for it. Like I hired a woman who ended up being, I promoted her to being a content manager, content editor at this public company. She was great. On the last round of the interview where I was calling to make her the offer, did what did she do? She actually took over kind of starting the conversation by apologizing for how bad the interviews had gone and asking that I would keep her in mind for future interviews. And she was by far the best candidate out of like 15 people I'd spoken to that
Wow.
had made it through all the weeding before there. Because my teams had to interview them before I would talk to them. She was by far the best. And I was like, that's not the conversation I want to have. And so, which was great. But one of the things was not only did I get her to pull out or tell me the stories where she'd been successful, but she had shown in that as well, but that she had a humbleness of heart that she was going to be coachable. And so there were like, hey, I don't get everything right. Now, there's nothing wrong with being confident. There's nothing wrong with being right. But at the end of the day, go back to that first point. We're all wrong about something in our job that we think we're right. And so I want to have people on the team that are open to being wrong. They can have strong ideas that they hold loosely and that they're willing to go to other people with that as well, both acknowledging you may have a really strong opinion, but I'm going to coach you into making it having loose so that we can have a conversation. Or you may be wrong about something, or I might think you're wrong about something, but you're really right about it. And I want to be able to have that healthy conflict. And so I'm looking for those things because for me, especially with AI now, like the pure knowledge bit of it's us like that's not the biggest deal. The biggest thing now is the milieu of can you process, can you logic through things, can you have conversations with people or ChatGPT or Perplexity or with Claude and logic through that it is lying to you.
Wow. That's good. That's good. We talked about that. Which brings me to another great question I have for you. When we talk about you being the CEO, I just love saying this, the CEO of scaling companies, building environments that thrive. How do you build, and you've touched on this a couple of different times, but building environments that thrive, where people can thrive. Tell us about that.
I talked a little bit more like the servant leadership side of it, but for me, the to really thrive and scale is not just bringing the people on the team and continuing reiterating back in your actions to them, but you do have to try to figure out how to systematize everything, and that should be
Mm,
easier for people today with AI because you can have it listen in, you can do screen recordings that'll walk through and actually build your standard operating procedures from watching you do things, but you need to have everything systematized as much as possible because it does a few different things, at least in my experience. And so one is like it scares people when you're like, hey, I want to be able to keep your job going if you get hit
mhm.
by a bus. What people hear is you're going to fire me.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like I want everybody to be looking at getting better, but I also want them to be able to improve. And so I find that documenting every part that you do of a process even if you don't review it with anyone else, so much happens in the refinement when you go, well, actually, sometimes I do this, or sometimes I do this, but not all the time. But it's really good when I do that. My customer success calls with our clients are much better when I do these one or two things beforehand. Like you need to document that. But the other part is like part of high performing teams is taking time off and it's feeling like you can take time off. We've all been around the person whose anxiety is always here. And so when things are documented, even if it's a small team, if it's a 15, 20 person team and nobody else does anybody else's job, well, then when you take vacation, you can actually say, here's the things that you have to do to make up for me for the 2 weeks I'm on vacation. And you can disappear and I don't have to bother you. And you can know that I can actually step in and fill that. I can be confident about letting you do that. Then as the leader, I can also encourage my team to say, hey, I need you to actually take time.
I like that. You don't see a lot of leaders who actually tell their teams, you need to take time. You need to take that time off and really care about their well being and their wellness. But I've also found that leaders are afraid to step away as well, and they think they have to be there. So, how do you encourage them to take the time?
I'm not a good example of that, I would just tell you. I say that in terms of, so I've been blessed to work with a lot of companies that are based in Europe and based in Asia, especially in Europe. We go on a holiday. Like 4 to 6 weeks is a short time off where just you disappear. And it's like, okay, it took me a little while getting used to, but I love that. And so like the CEO at one of our companies that we sold twice actually to two different public companies. That's a different story. He was Australian. And so one of his rules was everybody had to take off. We had a normal vacation, but you had to take off 2 weeks together every year. And
Wow.
I mean, we had some crunch times. We sold that company during COVID, and so we had a little bit of a leniency on that during that time period. But he's traditionally done that. I'm like, wow, like I love that. Well, so I told people that when we hired them. I told people that during interviewing. I would sit down with people and go, hey, I'm not seeing you take vacation. We track vacation even with unlimited vacation, not to make sure that people were taking too much. We did have one instance of that, but it was really to make sure people were taking time. And so I'm going back to people. And so Tiffany on my team at that company comes to me and says, hey, Kurt, I know you tell everybody to take vacation. You just got on a meeting about not taking vacation. She's like, you haven't taken any days off in like a year and a half. And to
Wow.
me, I'm like, well, yeah, but I've structured my life in a way so that because I had teams on different continents and different time zones, I'm like, when I want to take a Thursday afternoon off and go hiking with my 5-year-old at the time, I'm like, I can do that. And the machine keeps going. She's like, yeah, but that's not what you tell people. You don't tell them flexibility. You tell them to take time off. So I went and asked a couple other people, and other people, two of them I was having issues with about not taking time off, said, you don't take time off. We don't believe you.
Wow.
So that is that healthy conflict. I mean, imagine how much courage it takes for somebody. And she'd worked for me for 2.5 years at that point. She scheduled time to come to me and say, "This is what I want to talk about." And I was like, so we also did I believe in doing like micro rewards. And so I don't remember what I may have sent there, like, dinner for her and her husband, or here's, I think we did like flavored bacon for a while. So we've used I used to use this tool called Thanks, where I could just go in and schedule something and you got an email and it just give them your shipping address and it shows up at your house.
Awesome. Awesome. Tell me more about the micro awards because I think that goes back to building the environments, right? Where people can actually thrive. So, what do they get in a micro award for? What type of work or how do they show up?
Yeah, so for me, micro rewards are usually only given for things where everybody in the team kind of just gets them, not for doing good, but sometimes I would cycle through. Micro rewards, everybody on my division got for a while was a laser etched cutting board. And so you just had to enter your name, whether first name, last name, whatever you wanted on there, and then it showed up at your house. I think they were, $50, $75 a piece. But usually, so I'd have things like that where it's like I found something, maybe I didn't have the budget in every month to do it for everybody in the division. So after like 3 or 4 months, everybody would get a cutting board. But usually where I would do things and more of my personal notes usually come in for things are things that are around healthy conflict. I mean, you get what you reward. My wife was head of
Absolutely.
growth for a incentives company, and she's like, "Hey, look, all of the data shows if you give somebody a gift card, you might as well give them nothing." And she was
Mhm.
like, if you give them like a Walmart card, like they don't even remember that you gave them the $200. And so she's like, but if you give them like a $200 TV, she's like, they remember that. And
Mhm.
so I was like, okay, well, like most of the people I hire are high performers, and we all kind of give the attaboy, attagirls for things. And I was like, what do I want more of? I want the healthy conflict. I want the people that are challenging strong opinions. So when I see those, or we set it up that when somebody else in the team saw that, that was kind of getting pulled into operations. You could just come to me, or I had a senior product manager, senior product marketing manager, that him and a product manager, they were my culture ambassadors. It wasn't an HR thing. And so we started using this tool, thanks I mentioned. And so because they wanted to implement the type of teams that they wanted. And so our head of engineering loved his people, but would never write their personal note. And so, but he'd send you a Slack message and go, hey, Amanda just did this and here's what I liked. And so Spondon or Michael or I would then go, find something nice because we would know what she'd like, and that would show up in her email or be delivered to her house.
Awesome. I love that. It reminds me of an organization I worked for years ago, but my favorite leader of all times, his name was Kirk. And Kirk was just amazing at exactly what you said, just those small handwritten notes acknowledging the behavior that he wanted. The entire organization just wasn't crazy about Kurt in this culture that he had created within the organization because it was healthy. People loved working with him. So much so that when he left the organization, the company he was going to next, they sent a cease and desist that he couldn't take anybody with him from
Yeah.
that organization. So you're talking about threat. But it was just the little things that, he really embedded in the culture, challenging the status quo, challenging people, having that healthy conflict, a healthy dialogue, giving you voice to your ideas. And it totally transformed the culture of that particular team. And so just to kind of follow him, and I always tell that story, was that he was the most impactful leader in corporate America on my life. I felt healthy and alive and vibrant. I loved coming to work. It didn't matter about the drive that I was making there and home. It was just a great team to work for, but it was also a team of high performers because you had, the latitude to really be yourself and then to really challenge thinking there. So great
Yeah,
job.
I love that example. I mean, I look at things where it's like, to your point, he rewarded the behavior he wanted to see. And so some cases I see that from leaders, on the good and the bad. In other cases, I look at it where I'm like, the people that have been most impactful for me that have where I feel like that they've gone above and beyond me, that I felt like they knew me. And because they knew me, it made me want to over deliver for them. Was like
Absolutely.
I had a CEO that I'm now full carnivore. I have been for almost 2 years. I wasn't a full carnivore, but I was a meat eater then. And like this gentleman, vegan, and not only vegan, like his wife worked for PETA. And so, she listens to this podcast. He may get in trouble. One of those micro rewards that he sent me for something was he sent me like 9 pounds of flavored bacon, like 3 pounds of different thing
Wow.
that just arrived at my house. And I was like, what I don't like, and he was like, look, like I'm not going to eat that, but like that's
Exactly.
you. So he was like it doesn't matter if that's what I'm going to do in my personal life. That's you. So I thought you would like this. And he was like kind of like I'm sorry if I overstepped. I'm like, no, like I'm just so impressed because it's not who you've chosen to be in your personal life, and you're acknowledging who I am. And I'm like, that's awesome.
That is awesome. That's respect. That's credibility. It's really knowing the person and having an appreciation for who they are and stepping up at that level versus getting caught up in my own little thing. I don't eat meat, and it doesn't have to be meat. It could be
Right.
anything, right? I don't do this, and so I'm not going to give this. And I like to share with the leaders, it's not about you. It's not about you. If we can just, it's not about me and just realize that it's so much more meaningful.
Yeah, that makes me think to your thing about your question before about building high performance teams where it's not about you. And we both use the term culture. I think the most important thing I think for anybody that's listening here is culture is not what most companies hire for. Most people say they're hiring for culture. It's actually not performance based from what I see. What I see in their actions are they're hiring people that they like, that they
Mhm.
would potentially and likely be friends with outside of work. And I'm like, really? Like, this is not a family. At the end of the day, this is a high performing sports team, best scenario. And I'm like, so I've hired people where like in the interview, I'm like, I would not like you. You wouldn't like me if we were neighbors. Like we would have
Exactly.
issues, but you're going to be incredible at the role I'm bringing you into. And we enjoy our working relationship and we respect each other for that because culture to me from a work perspective are things that others will see in your actions and how they will feel working with you, trying to hit those business outcomes. It doesn't matter if you'd ever want to go to dinner with them if you live next to each other.
I agree. I think that's a certain level of maturity to be able to see it in that particular aspect, right? We get caught up and you see it all the time. I say organization, they're so cliquish. I like this person. I'm not going to challenge this person because I like them. We're going to go with their idea. We're going to support them. It's not the best, but we go off to the races with the wrong decision because this is my friend or this is the person that I like. Whereas the person who's challenging us, pushing us,
Yeah.
elevating performance, we think, well, this is the problem child. They don't fit. They're not a good fit. They don't belong. And you go through all of the things that are subjective versus, the things that are objective that you can actually measure. You get caught up in your feelings.
Right.
Yeah. So before we end, I have another question for you that I'm excited for you to tell the audience about. We've talked about this offline, but I wanted them to hear, how did you become a presidential advisor?
I had taken 12 months off initially, just to spend time with my wife after having not wisely started a venture-backed company and started it, done quite well with it, and told my wife I was going to take another year off. And 6 months into that second year, I get a call from my sabbatical, from the White House at that time saying, "Hey, we'd like to have a conversation about you doing some things with President Trump." And I'm like, okay, this is kind of funny because I have friends that I haven't spoken to in years from college that would do a practical joke like that as well. So I asked, like, how can I like verify this? And so they gave me a switchboard number and I called back. And what ended up happening was they had a belief from a business and environment perspective that they should help the small percentage of companies that could just use the Made in America country of origin logo. And every country has a country of origin standards.
Right.
And so they had spoken to like 10 or 11 people in the industry, and everybody mentioned me, Margarita Mendoza, or the Made in America movement, which Margarita had started. And Margarita had told me, I don't do public stuff. Talk to Kurt. I was the chairman of the organization at the time. And so we ended up bringing, I'd have to look back at the articles that I read, 15 or 16 of the companies of like the 20 companies at the table for the first symposium. Had quite a few kind of calls and conversations after there. But I did make sure that Margarita came because she had built this organization. And so even though if it wasn't uncomfortable, she had to make sure she went, and she did great. So
I love that story because it just talks about playing at a higher level, right? Where your work is recognized and your name is circulating throughout the industry. So, how do you build that type of, I'm going to call it credibility and a reputation over time to be recognized that when the president calls, the people say, yes, you need to talk to this particular person.
I mean, I don't know if most of it, I don't know if I can network my way into the White House, if I was
Right.
intending to do it. I think that for me, I try taking that approach. There's a concept called net weaving instead of networking. A friend of mine named Bob Littell wrote the book in the late 70s, early 80s. He's based here in Georgia. But the following a practice of that, I have a personal CRM. I think anybody who is managing people should be spending, it's $150 a year for like, there's the best one I like is called Dex, DEX. But a personal CRM is different than Salesforce or anything else. And there's some other salesy related CRMs that claim to be personal CRMs, but they're not. Because a personal CRM has no pipeline. But a personal CRM allows me as a leader. So how do you build that influence is like, yes, I have to take notes for HR for people that work for me, but I use my personal CRM to take notes about who the person is, what their career goals are, so that years later I can go back and go, oh yeah, like I had somebody that worked for me that became the president of the Georgia Woodworkers Guild, like basically a
Wow.
nonprofit woodworker. He really is good at woodworking. And like I made a note of that. And so like now since I've had, this has been years later, and I have other people that I come across and they're into woodworking and they're trying to figure things out. I'm like, hey, let me introduce you to Scott. And so, but I have that in my personal CRM. And so it brings some of the system to what good leaders do is just naturally go back and forth, and allows me then to group people up too. Like I have a group for just people that are my fraternity, an executive roundtable that's I've been in for a few years. So people that I've met through that. Well, if I didn't have the CRM, I wouldn't necessarily know how we met. And so I'm able to categorize things like that and then use as a way to easily go back because I've got seven, maybe 8,000 contacts on LinkedIn. I don't know how many are on my phone from years. Like there's no way I could keep all of that coherent in my mind.
I love that. Great advice. So, what's next for you?
I'm building another great company right now. I'm working for a gentleman named Preston. We run a company called EZ Home Search. EZ is in zebra home search. So it's the first privacy first real estate platform that's out there. And so it's been growing very well. We've launched another company in January. We have another one that'll be launching towards the end of the year. And so that's where all of my focus is right now when I'm not talking to lovely people like you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And where can they find you? Where can our audience find you?
My personal website is the hub for everything. And so go to Kurt Uhlir, uhlir.com. and it'll splinter to other things. If you want to see me going to the gym on Saturday mornings with my little girl, that'll take you to Instagram. If you want to see this executive community I mentioned, hey, it'll link out to CEO NetWeavers and such from there.
Awesome. And it really is a great website. So you should go there now. When I went, I was absolutely blown away, including about your penchant for alligators. I thought that was very interesting as
We all
well.
have interesting hobbies. I just happen to be able to pull alligators out of a
I
lake.
don't think mine aren't quite as interesting as that. I'm a little, writer, journaler, do some dream interpretation. I'm not going anywhere near an alligator.
I mean, I used to quilt, if that's a better hobby.
No, that doesn't even seem like it. Well, I enjoyed the conversation today. Thank you for helping us to be a game changer and looking forward to many more conversations with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You don't lead like everyone else, so your resources shouldn't look like everyone else's. I created the Game Changer Leadership Collection for high impact leaders like you, visionaries, change agents, decision makers who lead with intention and influence. This free, high impact resource pulls from my leadership arsenal and delivers immediate, actionable insights you can use right now to elevate your influence, lead with conviction, and drive lasting transformation. It's not just a toolkit, it's your first step toward leading at the level you were born for. Let me show you what's inside. The Leadership Edge Sampler. It's a preview of my 10 daily power skills to sharpen your influence and impact. The Influence Language Mini Guide. Essential phrases to increase your authority and build trust in every room you walk into. The Leadership Blind Spot Snapshot. Because the greatest risk are the ones we don't see. The Power of One Visual Aid. A reminder that even one decision, one tone, or one conversation can shift a team or stall a movement. The Executive Briefing Checklist, a go to tool for high stakes communication that drives clarity and alignment. The 5 minute accountability brief, a no fluff framework to build a culture of ownership fast. And we have the Game Changer Ascension Model Overview, my proprietary leadership growth map to help you scale your influence with intention. These are the very same tools I use with executives, culture shapers, and elite teams, leaders who know what's at stake and aren't here to play small. Because when you're called to shift systems, influence nations, and build legacies, you can't afford to lead on autopilot. This is where your next level begins. Download the Game Changer Leadership Collection today. It's free, it's strategic, and it's built for leaders who are born to shift the game. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, and this is your Leadership Edge. Thank you for joining me on the Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where we don't follow trends, we set them, and we don't just lead teams, we shift legacies. If today's message challenged, stretched, or inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, tag it, lead through it, because real leaders don't just consume wisdom, they multiply it. Want to go deeper? Subscribe to the Ultra Influential newsletter for exclusive tools, behind-the-scenes strategy, and weekly mindset shifts for the leader ready to move nations, markets, and minds. Visit www.smpistrategies.com or send a note to leadership@smpistrategies.com. And if you're ready for next level coaching or consulting that positions you as the right leader at the right time in the right place, let's talk. This is what we do, and we do it with precision, power, and purpose. Remember, change isn't just something you lead, it's something you become. Stay bold, stay brilliant, stay a game changer.